Hey everybody, thank you all for coming. I'm Adam Bozanich, CTO of Akash Network, Overclock Labs. This is my first time at Cosmoverse. I'm just blown away by all the projects here, the community here. It's a really inspiring place to be. So thanks for coming. I'm really happy to be speaking with you today. A little bit of background about Overclock Labs. We started as a normie tech company. We're a deployment platform we were building. The main problem we were trying to solve is we felt like the internet had kind of lost its way. Originally, the internet was supposed to be like this interconnected set of independent nodes that could withstand nuclear blasts, all that thing. It was decentralized. But what had happened with the move to cloud is that much of the hosting had been centralized into a few small number of large companies that were hosting the vast majority of the applications that we all use every day. Very quickly, we realized we wanted a marketplace, and not only that, we wanted a decentralized marketplace. So we originally found Tendermint. We built our first version on Tendermint. SDK wasn't available at the time. Thankfully, SDK became available. We rewrote it in that, and we've had our network available for about a year and a half. It's been live. I'm going to give you a little bit about the state of the Web3 infrastructure. Web3, actually, the problems we were originally trying to solve is especially prevalent in Web3. It goes across the board, but there's a lot of opportunity in Web3 for our technology. I'll give you a bit of a kind of overview of like the way it works and some of the ecosystem that's been built on top of Akash and where we're going to be going from there. So the state of current Web3 infrastructure. I think as we all know, this has been a topic, a hot topic. The protocols themselves are extremely decentralized, but the infrastructure that runs all these protocols is not. So if you look at Ethereum, like more than 50% are centralized within a few number of hosting companies. Similar with Solana, this has been a hot topic lately, as we all know. And so it's like we have these amazing protocols built to like kind of empower individuals and independent entities around the world, but fundamentally they're running on these centralized hosting. We saw this recently, of course, with Hesner. Hesner just kind of basically turned off running blockchain applications. It was a huge issue. We were actually pretty proud when this happened because Akash started trending at that time. This really validated our thesis that Akash is a solution to this infrastructure layer of what we're all building. We can make this thing actually be decentralized, not only from a protocol level, but from an infrastructure level as well. So yeah, hosting is centralized. As people have been moving to these big clouds, it's left all these smaller data centers by the wayside, these independent data centers. So it's like, hey, why don't we just move to the smaller data centers? Well, the reality is that there's an enormous amount of friction when moving to these smaller data centers. First of all, you have to find them. So how are you going to find? It's very difficult to find any of these like thousands and thousands of data centers. It's difficult to find them. It's difficult to compare between them. The contracts aren't like on demand necessarily. They're longer contracts. There's more capex. You might have to buy more at a time. So the kind of ease of use of cloud is really powerful in that you could spin something up and spin it down, and you only get charged for that. Well, you could actually have better performance, lower cost on these independent data centers if only it was easy to use. And Akash solves that problem for us. One of the things about this is that as the move to centralized cloud providers has happened, these smaller data centers, they're still there, but they're going down. But even so, there's still like 7 million-ish data centers out there that can be used and for the most part are sitting idle. And so those guys are looking for distribution channels. They want to reach the demand. And we think the demand really should be reaching these independent data centers. And again, this is what Akash is here to solve. So let's talk about some of the other issues of the public clouds, using public clouds. Again, our thesis has really been validated recently by Andre and Jason Horowitz. The public clouds are expensive, and even Jason Horowitz says like there's a huge opportunity in between the computers and the software that's running on them, and that's basically the layer that Akash is on. So we should be able to distribute applications again to these smaller data centers. The public clouds. Also, as it's become concentrated, they have a lot of power over pricing. So just to give you an example, we have a Lumen provider on Akash right now. They charge nothing for bandwidth. They have really powerful machines, really the price competitive, and they don't charge for bandwidth. If you're on Amazon, they charge a lot for bandwidth, and that's because they can, because everybody's started to move towards them. So really, there's a lot of reasons to try to switch away from these. Like I said, we originally targeting Web 2.0 companies, trad tech, normie tech companies, but it's especially relevant to Web 3. Low-cost infrastructure is really important for running base layer protocols that we all want to do, because we want to have a broad set of validators, independent validators, and that requires it to be really easy for validators to come online. So in order for these independent people to come online, it needs to be low-cost infrastructure. You see this, so there's some of these a lot of proposals on protocols to limit to put a lower bound on the commission for validating, and that's primarily to make it such that the validators that are really pretty far down in the number can still pay for their base infrastructure. Another way of getting at that problem is finding lower cost infrastructure. So lower cost infrastructure will get you more validators, and we'll have less centralized chains. So the current state of things, Web3 infrastructure there's a lot of concentration on big clouds. Those companies have the power to just turn off a protocol, essentially. And to fix that and then at the same time, for independent validators, there's a high barrier to entry because the cost of infrastructure is so high. So again, this is a problem that we think Akash is really well poised to solve, and this is how we could reimagine things with the Akash network. So this is a little schematic of what things look like today. Like with most people, you can replace that big top box by either Hetzner or AWS or what have you, but the reality is that many people are deploying to this sort of small set of companies who, again, have a lot of power to turn things off, to ramp up prices, what have you. Ideally, we're building decentralized protocols. We would like for there to be a decentralized set of hosting providers that we can deploy onto. So this is what it would look like. Users can choose between a wide set of providers. There's a lot of competition among those providers for pricing, for features, for locations, what have you. And this is really what, again, the initial vision of the internet was supposed to be about. It was supposed to be decentralized. And this is where, again, Akash can really kind of put things back to where the original vision for the internet and actually the requirements of an infrastructure layer for decentralized protocols should be. So the Akash marketplace would sit in between the providers, supply, and the tenants deploying people, the demand for compute. So we've been live for about a year and a half. We've seen, so just showing it. Here's a little slide showing that things actually work. This is a picture from a project called CloudMos, who makes it easier to deploy on Akash. I think Max is here somewhere. If maybe he's in the audience, maybe not. But as you can see, the price advantages have been borne out. Akash, compared to many of the big clouds, is reduced by 85% here. That fluctuates depending on how big of machines you want, many things, but for the most part, that thesis has been borne out. So with Akash, you have lower cost, greater choice. You can choose between many independent providers, more self-sovereignty. It's open source, community-driven, powered by a decentralized network. Just one real quick, we really do call this thing the open cloud or the people's cloud. We think the internet should be controlled by all the participants of the network of the internet, instead of just some big companies that host almost everything. So it's a really big part of what we're about. So I'll go into a little bit of the details about how it works, a bit of the technical aspects of it. We are, of course, open source, and we leverage a lot of open source projects. In particular, we use Docker containers, which is the way that the vast majority of applications are deployed today. A Docker container is essentially like if you want to run a web application or a blockchain node, an API node, a validator node, you package it up in a thing called a Docker image. That image can then just be pushed to to an arbitrary hosting company, and everybody knows how to run your application in that Docker image. Kubernetes is the open source way of orchestrating the execution of these Docker images, or Docker containers when they're running. So we leverage both of those things. Tenants, people that are providing applications, package their things up into a Docker image. Providers, the people that are running applications, we end up using Kubernetes to run those applications. The way that the decentralized marketplace works, it's pretty simple as you'd imagine. A person says like, hey, I want to run, I want to run an application, kind of describe your application. On-chain, not everything goes on-chain. What goes on-chain is essentially like the resources you want. I want 5 CPU, I want 10 gigabytes of memory. I want it to be in this particular location. I maybe wanted to have this, be audited by this particular entity. That order goes on-chain. Then providers are able to bid on those orders, and you choose a bid that you would like. You reach a lease. We call this the resource acquisition phase. So this is the marketplace part. Once you have an agreement with a provider, then you send your manifest or the rest of your assets to that provider to be executed. Diving down into a little bit deeper for people that developers here that are familiar with Docker Compose files. We got a lot of influence from Docker Compose files for how we configure these things. So you could say like, hey, what app services do I want to run? Is it a blockchain node? Is it a Tetris app? Is it an API server for an iOS app? What resources do you want? Is it 10 gig memory? Is it 16 CPU? Is it a half a CPU? Where do you want to run it? Do you want it on the East Coast of the US, West Coast of the US, many other things, and how much are you willing to spend? So that ends up being the ceiling for the price. Then providers come in and bid lower than that. So it's a reverse auction. So that's a little bit like tedious, dealing with YAML. People hate it, understandably. But fortunately, we've had just an explosion of projects that are building on top of Akash to make this thing more usable. So the building on Akash piece is, first of all, there's Prater, who makes an amazing application for helping run providers. Running a provider is a pretty technical endeavor. And Prater has made it incredibly easy for people to create providers on the network. It's just an amazing project. Prater is also here at this event, and I don't know if, there they are, over there. Yeah, please say hi to them. It's an amazing project. Then from the user side, from the tenant side, if you want to deploy applications, not everybody wants to write the YAML or use, frankly, a pretty crappy CLI at this point. People want to be able to do push button things to deploy. Cloud Modes, they used to be Akashalytics, was the first one. They just totally crushed it. So they do not only deployments, they do a bunch of analytics about what's currently running running on Akash. And Max, I don't know, oh, Max is over here, so please go talk to him if you're interested in deploying on Akash. It's an amazing project. There's a couple others that are coming online soon, Spherion and Vixello. Vixello has like a huge number of applications, and they want to move all of them over to Akash. It's actually a really exciting project. Moultrie audits is part of this, like, in the real world, like, pre all of this stuff. Like in the real world, when somebody wants to use a data center, there's auditing of that data center. Like, are people, like, do outside people have access to the computers? What's the security model? How often is it up? And we needed to model that on Akash. So the Akash network actually has facilities to allow for these auditors, and these auditors can be independent. When I'm deploying, I can choose any number of auditors that I'd like. So I could say, like, hey, I want a provider on the West Coast that this set of auditors have said, yes, that person is actually on the West Coast, and by the way, they're like, we rate them at 4 out of 5 stars. Moultrie is the first third-party auditor out there, and this is something that we want to continue to grow. We think that there should be like a thriving kind of ecosystem of auditors on the network, and this is something that we're going to continue to work on. And because of these platform applications, we've seen a lot of integrations. Some of the applications on the you can see on your right. You'll recognize a lot of the logos. We intend for that to continue growing. We've seen an amazing amount of growth in that. We've seen a lot of success in mining. So it's been a really exciting year and a half for us. And in addition to that, we are finally, so our original vision was that we wanted to create, this was like, way back 2016, 2017, we wanted to create a console to access this network of independent data centers, and we are finally reaching that point. So we're in like a private beta right now. In fact, you can get your hands on it and try this console. We have a workshop happening right now. It's in the sugar room. What is it? The sucre room, okay? So please come visit us. We'll be over there. You could get your hands on and deploy things. If you want to reach out to us, there's plenty of ways to reach out to us. I'm at Bozanich on Twitter. Go to Akash Network. You can find all these links. And if you have any questions, either talk to me offline, come to our workshop, or I don't know if we're able to field questions now or not. But. 2 slides? The one that was showing like all the links and stuff. Oh yeah, sure. Can I? Yeah, there we go. Yeah. Tokenomics? Yeah. So the payment method and the token is from Akash. We have like the kind of traditional inflation model that many of the Cosmos chains have. We're going to, one of the challenges we've seen is onboarding providers. And so we're going to be adding a mechanism to incentivize providers to come online. So it's as with everything, it's a work in progress. But fundamentally, it's like, okay, it's a payment token. And we're going to be incentivizing providers as well, so like offering them to help reduce the cost as we're bootstrapping this network. It's a very ambitious project. It's a two-sided marketplace that we have to bootstrap, so we have to like match supply and demand and kind of bootstrap it from there. We've been doing a lot of work over the past year and a half to do that. It's very difficult, but at this point, we're going to start focusing on helping providers come online and bootstrapping them, because we can find the demand, but getting the supply on there we found to be a challenge. Prater has helped with this immensely, but we still have some work to do there.